Good morning. This is Catherine from Gauge Dye Works. I'm just going to add Andrea Rangel. And we're just going to chat this morning because Andrea and I collaborate. Oh, there she is.
Good morning. Hooray.
I was just saying we're just going to chat about our design process because we collaborate every year. And
for the past 7 years, this will be our 8th.
Year number 8. That is a long time. Yeah, so we thought we would just go through. I think our collaborations are unique in the sense that it's not like I dye the yarn and send it to you and then you do a pattern. We figure out what the yarn and the pattern are going to be and then design them both together.
Yeah. It's hard to explain that, but they're not separate things. They go together. We don't have a process where we go away from one another, really. We kind of check in and make sure that, are the stripes the right width? Are the colors going well? Is it working with the design? So yeah, let's talk about some patterns.
Yeah, so we picked a specific, there's my hand, a specific pattern today, which is the Three Seasons, you've got Goldstream.
I've got both.
The Three Seasons Shawl.
So we're going to talk about Three Seasons, and we're going to talk about Goldstream and how they are similar to one another. And thank you, Needle Freak, for congrats on 8 years. We appreciate that.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so let's start by talking about Three Seasons. This shawl is created with just one skein of yarn. The only tails that you had to weave in were at the beginning and at the very end. So at the cast on and at the bind off here are where we wove in ends. Everything else happens within the skein of yarn, so you never have to change yarns, which I think is pretty cool, especially because you can see these stripes are all approximately the same width. Catherine, can you tell me a little bit about how you did that? Because I think it's really cool.
Yeah, so the idea is that part is just math, so we can dye it right into the skein. So you can see, if you've knit a triangular shawl before, the first rows might only be 12 stitches long or something. And then the final rows are, I don't know, a few hundred stitches. So I just went through and did the math, which there's a bunch of ways to do it, and I've figured out them all over the years, probably not all of them. I figured out a bunch. But it's basically if I just sketch a triangle on a piece of grid paper and draw out my triangles, all that matters is the ratios. So if it's on a piece of grid paper, you can even just count the squares. And if there's 40 squares in the bottom edge and 10 squares in the top, then you need 4 times as much yarn for that bottom edge as for the top. And so for that one, that skein looks like this. And when you untwist it, you can see there's a whole lot of the gray, which is that border, and not a whole lot of these 2 pinks, which are right at the top. And then we also made a larger version. So this was from our summer club a few years ago. And we decided we gave options for colors and we gave options for the size of the shawl. So the difference between the 1 skein version and we did a 2 skein version, the math was all the same. I just multiplied everything by 2 to make it bigger. And then we had to split it across. Hold on.
This one is the smaller version. So this is a little shawlette version. And then there's one that's a big shawl. So the 2 skein one is a big shawl if you like to be all wrapped up in things. So that's the little one. But it makes a really nice little kerchief.
Yeah, so you can talk about your design, but for this one we picked the width of the stripes. We also have some just shawls we could look at to see okay, a 1 skein shawl typically has I don't know, 100 rows in it or something. So then that's where it kind of went back to you to see how big you want each of those textured motifs to be, to see how many stripes we could fit onto a shawl.
Yeah. So one thing about this particular project is that we have these little sections in the middle, these little sort of upside down triangles that go throughout. And these restart every time there's a new color. So when you're following this pattern, basically when the color changes, that's when you know to restart the center motif so that you get a new little upside down triangle. So it's kind of like a paint by number situation where when the color changes, that gives you the message of what to do. Now the patterns also include instructions for if you're not using one skein of yarn like this, but I think it's incredibly cool that you can just like basically follow this by intuition once you've got the hang of it, because you can just see, okay, the color changed, now I need to start this central motif over again in order to get basically the same motif throughout the whole shawl, all the way down the spine, which I think is quite pretty.
But Andrea, tell me what happens if the color changes in the middle of a row, or if there's one row extra in one color?
Well, Catherine, I'll tell you. So we've designed these projects to be really flexible because everyone's gauge is not going to be exactly the same. So even though like you're looking at this and you see really solid stripes, there are places where the colors don't change right at the beginning of a row. So if you look really closely, we can see the spot where the blue and the yellow come together. So we think of these projects as being very like watercolors, rather than being like really specific, like you have to color in perfectly in the lines. All of the projects that we design together are designed carefully so that when the yarn arrives at a different color, maybe at a different spot for each person, each knitter, your project's going to be unique, but it's still going to be really beautiful, and you don't have to worry that things are going to be showing up wrong for you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how that works. Do you want to talk about Goldstream?
Yeah, so Goldstream, actually, can you hold up Goldstream? So this was another club project. This was from our first year. So you can see it is a different shape and a different design entirely, but it's still the same idea that you just start knitting, and when the colors change, you do a different thing. So in Three Seasons, when the colors change, you restart the textured section. In this one, when the color changes to that gold, you do that little short row section. And these are either leaves floating in the stream, or I feel like we had another description.
That was an option, like little fish in the water. But yeah, we were thinking of it as like autumn or summer, late summer leaves in the stream.
Yes. So you can see it's the like half pie, or the pie shawl, like a half pie. Mm-hmm. So it's a different shape, and we've done different things with it. But the idea that there's just one skein, dappled sunlight. Ooh, one comment. I think that's right. So even though the output is exactly, or is totally different, the idea that you just cast on, and then when the yarn changes color, you might do something a little different, and then you just go back to your knitting.
Yeah. The cast on, there's a tail at the beginning that we had to weave in, and one at the very end that we had to weave in. All the other things were included in the skein. So all those color shifts in the yellow.
And I do remember some of the design process for that one. You had knit like maybe this much of it, and I forget, anyway, and we were like, well, how many of these little leaves do we want? And then we went back and added like maybe fewer at the beginning and more at the end. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's also part of our design process, is we know what we want, but like, what is the correct number of little yellow sections, and exactly how much yarn should be in each of those little yellow sections? You need to swatch to figure that out.
Exactly, and the size of those little leaves or dappled sunlight is determined basically by how much yarn is available in that yellow section. So we played around with bigger leaves and smaller ones until we sort of came up with one a size that we both thought was like, hey, that's it. That looks just like what we both want. And so that required both me swatching and Catherine dyeing different yarn options for me to play with. And these little short row sections, again, with the idea of the watercolors is they all kind of begin and end in different ways. So they're not going to be perfectly the same. And they have little tails that kind of go off into the distance. So as you're knitting this, there's no perfection needed, right? Because the point is that it looks like a painting and that it's sort of beautiful with, like, some of them might be really well contained and some of them might have their little tails floating off into the distance. So, oh, made me think of Starry, Starry Night. Oh, yeah. That, there you go. Yeah.
Well, and let me find a couple of my samples.
Thank you. So
the one Andrea has is the original colors, and then Starry Night reminded, they weren't yellow, they were green leaves in this one.
I have,
but the original Goldstream.
I'm gonna go
the original
grab my
Goldstream. Yeah, the original Goldstream was for our club, and then the year later when we released them, so our club is always only for club members for the first year, and then the following year we just put them out there for everyone. We did some extra colors. So we had this, we had the yellow one, so this,
here it is.
Yeah, and that's the sample that I don't have.
This is the pink and gold is maybe my favorite because I just really love those colors together. So pink, gold, gray.
I see a comment that says silver salmon would be interesting.
Ooh.
That would be good. Yeah, and these I used gray. It was like gray to a color for that, the fade in the body. And this was just gray to gray.
Oh, those are cool with the different color leaves.
Different color. The other thing I wanted to mention too, one of the fun things about doing this as a club is we get feedback right away from a bunch of people knitting it, and they would be sharing their photos. And of course, everyone's little leaves shows up in different places. And for some people, this, like, I think was hard to just be like, they're just going to happen when they happen. They really wanted them to be like, the problem with randomness is randomness includes little chunks that only seem random if you have a big enough, if you can zoom back enough. So there would be people knitting, and like you can see here, these all fell in the middle just by chance. And then there's a few that all fell beside each other over here. And then there's a few all beside each other there. And when you, I don't know if I can go back far enough.
There you go.
When you look at it from far away, it actually, I mean, it is random. But for some people, they'd see, oh, this is the third one in a row that's on the left side. What do I do? And our advice is just like, just be one with the shawl, like just let it flow. But also it's your knitting. And if it's going to drive you nuts and you're willing to like weave in some ends, do whatever you want. You can put those, you can cut the yarn and weave in some ends.
Put it somewhere else. Yeah.
So we have our vision, and then we have whatever the knitter. I do like to think of all of these as like the two of us collaborating with whoever's knitting it. Yeah. Because ultimately the knitter, we want you to be happy with it, and so you should do whatever's going to make you most happy.
Exactly. So I guess I'll just round up like what the club is. We send a skein of yarn and a pattern 3 times. So June, July, and August, you'll receive a skein of yarn and a pattern that is, they were just designed in collaboration together. So you know that they're perfect for each other. We don't tell you ahead of time what those things are going to be. You don't get pictures ahead of time of exactly the projects because we really enjoy the mystery of it. But sorry, we will be sharing hints. And if you look back at our feeds from yesterday, we have some photos of some nature things that have been inspiring us for this year's collection. So we'll have 3 projects, all of them 1 skein, and you can sign up for all 3 at once on May 22nd, or you can sign up for them one at a time in May, June, and July.
Yeah, so that is this year's summer club, May 22nd.
Yes.
And if you don't like surprises, then last year's summer club will be with no surprises. We will have available later in the summer.
Yeah, in August, I think. Yeah. And if you want to see more of the designs like Goldstream and Three Seasons, you can go on both of our websites. So I'm at andrearangel.com. And if you look in my shop, there's a little section that says Gauge Dye Works collaborations. And that's everything we've ever done. So you can see those. And they're on Catherine's website too. So if you go to the Gauge Dye Works website, you can see them as well there.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we're going to do this again next week with a different pattern.
Yeah.
So if you have any questions, once we post this, there'll be a place for comments. We would be happy to answer any questions next week.
Yeah. And I'm going to add just one more thing because I think it's really cool. I sent out a newsletter with my announcement yesterday, and I got a few responses from people saying that they're going to sign up. And I was just going to read a couple of them because I thought they were really delightful. Ooh. So first, I have never done a summer club with you and definitely plan to sign up. So excited, smiley face, which is cool. And then I am totally signing up for summer club this year, 5 exclamation points. I'm looking forward to seeing your club patterns and yarn collaborations. My favorite so far have to be the 3 Seasons socks and garden wedding shawl. And then absolutely, I'll sign up. I've missed only once since they started and regretted it. So don't regret it. All right, so I think we can sign off and come back next week.
That sounds great. We'll see you next week. Thanks everyone for joining us.
Thanks for joining. Bye.